Okay, chat. Can you hear me? Someone, oh, you're saying hey. Does that mean you can hear me? Good, because we're testing out something. Hello, it's Sunday. It's winter solstice. I think it's the shortest day of the year. It's very cold where I am. And I am Dr. Julie or Professor Julie or just Julie. I'm a college faculty member at Carleton College in psychology. I have a PhD in psychology in animal cognition. And I've worked with birds and monkeys for about 38 years. And monkeys very similar to the marmosets. I've also been helping out at Alveus with them. There's Momo walking around like a little bear. Okay. And because it's so cold, I started thinking about social behavior because usually in the winter we all get together and share food and share heat sources and double up on everything. So I talked to Evan about doing something on social behavior across the entire animal kingdom, and he said yes. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yes, double hello, everyone. Chat Chats collab, it's happening. My name is Evan. I am a PhD candidate in evolutionary biology, and I've been working with insects for about 10 years now. I am also the collections manager for a museum in Florida that I oversee the fourth largest insect collection in the United States. My background is in taxonomy and systematics of beetles specifically, but through my degree, I have taken social insect classes. And I thought this topic was really cool because of how diverse insects are. There's a lot of different ways that they exhibit sociality. So I think the crossover here between uh, Dr. Julie and myself is going to make this a pretty good chat.
Okay, and then so I'm going to just say something about the marmosets at first. We were going to be focusing in general on social behavior and specifically on parental care. There we can see Amanda giving Momo and Appa some great treats there. And you can see that they're sharing. They don't have to eat individually on their own, right? Although Appa's got his back to Momo, some animals will do that to not be threatening when they're sharing food. They don't like to look right into each other's eyes. That's pretty common. But they share quite well, and those of you who know these guys and have been here a long time know that Momo acts as kind of a dad figure, a father figure to Appa, although they're different species. Appa is a common or white-tufted marmoset, and Momo is a black-tufted marmoset. They were paired together to be sold together as, well, I guess it's not illegal in Texas, but it should be. Exotic pets. And it's apparent to me that Appa was raised to some degree by Momo after he was removed from his family. And so they have a kind of parental relationship. So many of you have seen Appa take food from Momo from his hand or from his mouth, and that is something that a baby would do and is called passive food sharing. And so as adults, Appa still does that with Momo. He's got a very strong connection with Momo. And so he does that periodically. It's not really, it looks like he's being very grabby because he's as big as Momo. But he's just doing what a baby would do. When I visited to help them with the enclosure, I was hand feeding them in the nut house. That's where they were living. And Appa, I was just trying to give Appa grapes and have him take them because we should have an adult relationship. And he started wanting me to hold the grape while he took bites out of it. So that would be more like a passive food sharing thing. So he actually tried to treat me like his mama too. So he likes to be juvenile that way and have others take care of him. And he has some bonding that's happened with humans. So he sees it that way. I wanted to mention the reason we're starting with them. You can see some of the sharing and the cooperative behavior here that not all animals can do. Is that there are only two species of primates besides us who do cooperative breeding, which means that they stay together for the most part and raise their infants together, and they both provide feeding and care and training So marmosets are one of the two species of all the New World monkeys and all the Old World monkeys and all the apes. And tamarins, the monkeys I had, are the other one. So we have something in common, and these are very special species of monkeys that share something with humans. There's something we refer to as convergent evolution and recurrent evolution. So in evolution, different species from different areas of the tree of life can evolve to have similar practices if there's the same kind of threat to them. The resources are rare, or it's likely that the offspring could die if both parents didn't help. And in primate world, humans do alloparental care, so it's either the couple that has the child or a family group situation. You know, it takes a village. So humans count in this as cooperative breeders and alloparental care units. And these two, the tamarins and these two guys, marmosets, would be doing that. But like macaque monkeys, the vervet monkeys you saw in the Africa trip, it was the female that was carrying the baby around. It's usually a female only carrying situation. Even with chimps, that's true. So the apes that are more related to us. And so, yeah, some people are saying sad. Don't be sad. There's lots of species that do this, and it didn't evolve as a thing in a lot of primates. We're going to look at birds later, and 90% of all the bird species do this. It's very, very common in birds. They cooperatively raise young. They obviously have to sit on the eggs, so that was probably one of the reasons, right? You have to incubate. And one parent can't do that or they'll die, you know, if they won't be able to leave to eat or anything. So they trade off that way. But once they're born, once they hatch, both parents help with feeding and with care and with training for them to fly and eat grains and things like that. What happened, Dr. Julie? We put one of the peanut yogurt chains that oh, thank you, Kayla. That's so sweet. I'll have to see if they take it. Oh, I see. That's where Appa went. That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, Kayla. I'm so glad you're here. So I just wanted you to understand how special it is that we get to watch this species of monkey, because and the fact that they do cooperative breeding means that they have to be sensitive to each other. They have to think about the special skills that requires. You have to cooperate. You have to reduce conflict. You have to be sensitive to others' needs. You have to watch out for others. That all of those things happen among mammals, among primates, among birds when they're cooperatively breeding. So that's why these guys might have special skills for lots of things that have to do with social behavior, and that's why we do as well. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask right now that I missed? What is the reason for this behavior? In humans, we do this because humans are underdeveloped and need a long time to grow up. Yes. Well, in monkeys, like these monkeys, marmosets, the gestational period is about 5.5 months or 6 months, and the same with tamarins. So you're pregnant for a long time. Obviously, the moms are going to do breastfeeding right when the babies are born. But the babies become large fairly quickly for these little monkeys. And so they always have twins. So I'm telling you all this genetic stuff now. So they always have twins. Animals that evolved to have multiples usually have a high mortality rate for infants. That's why like dogs will have 7 or some crazy number, right? And I'm sure Evan can tell you that insects will lay 1,000 eggs or something. So these guys have twins because their babies get eaten a lot by others or fall off. And then the babies can't thermoregulate. They can't either. The adults don't thermoregulate very well when they're sleeping. The babies have to be carried to survive through their infancy. So they have a long period of care that's needed where they have to cling and stay on the body of somebody else. And they become very heavy. If the mom had to do it by herself and she had twins on her and they became her size, or half of her size, each of them, it would be impossible. She wouldn't survive. They wouldn't survive either. And so through these, problems of fate with the evolution of these animals, they figure it out or they go extinct, right? And these guys, the male will take them when they have a larger family unit. Siblings also take the babies sometimes. So the babies always have to be carried. And they're not full grown till they're about at 1.5 years of age. They don't have to be carried that whole time, but a good portion of that time they do. So it's long in primate life, for a baby to grow like that, and they're heavy and they're needy. So I hope that helped you with that, because our brains are way too big when we fully develop, so we birth early before our brain. Yeah. So yeah, our brains, well, their brains do too, though. Their brains change after they're born a bit, not as much as ours. We get a lot more brain development through our lives, so your frontal lobe isn't completely done until you're like between 16 and 20. And so there's a lot of evolution, or I should say development and pruning of neurons and where things go through your lifetime. And monkeys have that too. They're not completely done when they're born. A lot of mammals are completely done when they're born. Their prenatal development is all there is. These guys have some postnatal brain development as well. Okay. And I see that's the thing I made. And that's Momo eating it. I don't know if they could get that off of that. I'm just wondering. The string can be eaten. It's jute. And then there's peanuts and yogurt. And I think Appa's pulling it from the other side. So they're not challenging each other. And he's basically licking the yogurt off the things, which is very cute. I'm so glad. I think the dowels are working. We put the dowels in there. I was hoping something would get hung from those. I think it's jute or seagrass. I can't remember which string I used. I have seagrass string, but both of them can be eaten. I mean, it's a material that can be chewed and swallowed, and it wouldn't hurt. So let's see if you can ask questions about the monkeys later too, but we should probably go look at insects and have Evan talk about this now. Yeah. Well, Momo can eat. I had tamarins who lost their teeth over time, and they can. He has a pretty strong jaw. He can crack. Look. Oh, that's Appa. But he'll be able to crack those open. They use their jaw on the side of their mouth, and Momo has teeth along the side. Also, they can just lick that yogurt off. It's just like a candy-coated kind of yogurt with cranberries and raisins underneath, different ones. So I think it'll be okay. It'll take them a while, which is good. All right. So if it's okay with you guys, we're going to go to see insects. Is that cool? Yes, I think it is. Evan, are you ready to go? Logan,
Yeah.
Could you take us to insects? He's looking there.
They seem excited about it. So,
Good.
yeah. So going off of what Dr. Julia was just saying, the spectrum of parental care and cooperation. Can you go to the Martys, Logan, please? In insects, because they're so diverse, there's a huge spectrum of how they cooperate. And the most basic form of insect cooperation, and what we could even loosely call sociality, is parental care. And you can see individualized parental care across basically all insects. There's at least some examples of it across earwigs take care of their eggs. There are moths and caterpillars that will group together to deal with predators. Beetles will specifically hover and cover over their larvae to, again, kind of protect from predators, things like that. But then you get all the way up into the really, really advanced parental care that is almost indistinguishable from what we see in the marms and the tamarins, where both parents are contributing to the care of the offspring. And just like in the tamarins, that is a very, very special type of cooperation in the insects because it is so uncommon. So parental care is the lowest level of sociality. But then you also have communal organisms which will live together, multiple individuals that are not necessarily related, but they don't split jobs or help take care of each other's offspring. And that is about where we get with the isopods. So in the wild, isopods of different species and from different parents will come together and basically be able to be found under the same rocks. The habitats and the places where they would like to be can support a wide diversity of isopods. And so even though they're all grouped up together, and sometimes even across species, they're not necessarily helping each other complete tasks. They have a similar requirement, and there is some interaction there between individuals. At the food pile, they're obviously going to be interacting in some way, but the isopods aren't really, at least on the insect definition of things, social. They're more communal than anything. And that's mainly the way that insects define it, because the other levels of sociality all involve some form of cooperative brood care, meaning that other individuals will help care for offspring that are not their own. And that's not really the case in the isopods, because they are a lot more like a marsupial than they are a communal monkey. And that's because the isopods have a little pocket underneath their abdomen that is called a marsupium. So it's a little pocket where they lay their eggs and where they provide food to their newborn immature isopods until they're ready to go out and explore the rest of the environment on their own. So that single mother is going to provide all of the nutrients and all of the care for her individual babies, and all of the other females will also provide individual care for their offspring specifically. They're not cooperating in any way besides sharing of resources.
Can I ask you a question, Evan?
Oh, of course, at any point.
I mean, how many babies do they have? Can a mom carry around all her babies in the little pocket, or is it shared across females, or do you know what happens with that?
They have smaller groups of babies. So one individual just carries her babies at a time. So, I mean, baby isopods can be pretty small. They can have upwards of like 20 to 50 at any given point, but the development time is pretty fast. They become self-sufficient a lot faster than, like you were saying earlier, the baby marmosets would. So they stay in there for a few weeks, and then they're basically ready to go out and eat the decaying leaf matter and zucchini and whatever else is available to them. So they're able to have really high reproductive rates because they invest so much in those few that they have at a time, and basically make sure they get to a point where, okay, they're self-sufficient now, and then they can breed again very, very quickly after that. So that's how they're still able to put out these like really, really large populations, even though they have such a high degree of parental investment.
Got it. Is that one that's smaller in the bottom of the screen, is that a juvenile then, or do they just come in different sizes? I don't know. The two up above look rather large compared to the little one down below.
Yeah, as they grow, they will go through different life sizes, but that one that's kind of in the far bottom right of the screen is definitely a juvenile compared to the other two, which are probably closer to adult size.
Okay.
Isopods are crustaceans, so they don't go through the same developmental cycles that insects do. The common one that we think about is what we would call complete metamorphosis, and that's like your average butterfly life cycle, right? Where there's an egg, a larva, a pupa, and then the adult. Isopods, since they're crustaceans, do a lot more similar growth to something like a grasshopper, where baby isopods look more or less exactly like adult isopods. They're just smaller. So the real only way to tell if something for sure is an adult is to see if they have the gonopods, which are the reproductive structures. So those develop when they're an adult. But up until then, it's very, very hard to distinguish juveniles unless they're noticeably smaller than the adults are, which is what we're seeing here. Are they visible on the belly like an opossum? Like if I flipped over a mother over, will I see a bunch of babies? Yes. So it's on the underside of the abdomen, so further away from the head. There's just a thin film that makes up this pocket. And when she has babies, you'll be able to see the little white dots under there. And that's something that I can post a picture of in the Discord if people are interested later. But yes, you can see the babies underneath. But like I was saying, insects exhibit a wide variety, or arthropods, I guess I should say, exhibit a wide variety of parental investment. So isopods are communal, where they're taking care of their own babies, but will oftentimes live together. But then that goes all the way up the spectrum to things like honeybees and termites and ants, which are what we call eusocial or truly social insects, where they have overlapping generations, meaning that there are multiple ages of insect in the same group working together. There is cooperative brood care, meaning that they will take care of offspring that are not their own. And then there's also reproductive division of labor, which essentially means that there are jobs in the colony. Everybody has a certain role to play, and that is like the highest form of insect society. And I think we've talked about that quite a bit on regular chats, and the VODs and things are available for anyone who's maybe missed those before. But ant society is very, very complex, and all of those ants in a colony are related to that singular queen. I think Julie asked earlier in the marms of, how many eggs an insect can lay. And over the course of a queen ant's lifespan, she can lay millions of eggs.
That's crazy.
Ant queens can live upwards of 25 years in certain species, and every single worker in that colony comes from that one individual queen. So they can store sperm for like 20 years after their initial mating, and then just keep pumping out babies for years and years and years to come. And over that lifespan of the entire colony, it can be anywhere from like hundreds of thousands to, like I said, millions of individuals all time.
And are ants pretty independent just after birth, or do they need any kind of care? Can they figure it out when they're
They need a ton of care to get to being an actual ant. So they're in the same group of complete metamorphosis. So
so it's like egg, larvae, ant.
Egg, larva, pupa, ant. Yes.
Oh dear.
So,
okay.
so they come out, they're these little tiny white grubs, don't have any legs, don't have any eyes. They're completely reliant on their older siblings to feed them. So like we were talking about with Appa and Momo, like there is someone's job in the colony to feed the babies. And that goes on for a couple of weeks. They pupate, so they go into like a cocoon stage where they rearrange from being just a goopy blob into something that resembles an ant. And then when they hatch from there, they are independent. But getting to that point, they're totally reliant on their older siblings. There's no way that they would be able to develop on their own.
The reason I'm so curious about social behavior in bugs is I assume things get in the way. You know, like in the Bug's Life, or yeah, A Bug's Life, that movie,
Mm-hmm.
like the gap in
Yep.
the line kind of thing. They were trying to play with that. Like the world is gonna screw up what you got planned, you know, and they have to be somewhat flexible in some way. Like how many of these, weird mushy things am I feeding? Or, do you just feed everything? Is it more zombie like? It seems like you'd have to have some flexibility depending upon the conditions to do this correctly, which would imply sort of neural coding that could be flexible.
Yeah, and that's a really common idea and something that we talk about a lot with ant biology specifically, because the way that the colony is set up, it's more like the colony itself is the organism, and the individual ants are just part of it. So the individual ants are the ones that are going out to forage and bring food back, and they're the ones that are going to encounter predators and obstacles and a gap in the line of bringing seeds back. But they're doing all of that for essentially the good of the colony itself. And there's been a lot of work done on this, and the idea is called like the superorganism,
Hmm.
where the individual ant is acting on behalf of the colony as a whole, not necessarily in its own best interests, which is where you have things like when honeybees sting, they're sacrificing themselves for the good of the colony. Because their reproductive individual, keeping a marmoset alive to pass on its genetics is the goal of the marmoset. But because the worker ants aren't reproducing, all of their decision making is doing their best to make sure that the colony as a whole survives,
Hmm.
because that's how they reproduce on like the colony level rather than on an individual level, because it's just the queen doing the mating.
Yeah, okay. Uh, you're not watching Pluribus, are you? That series on Apple TV. Anybody watching Pluribus? Or it's Plur One Bus, but no comments. No.
I have not, but
It's very buggy and it's with people. I
oh,
mean, it's supposedly
okay.
so people get changed by a viral vector that comes from aliens or something. I'll make it
Hmm.
quick. And it changes so they are like, it's weird when it comes in. Anyway, everyone who's affected, supposedly you would guess their RNA sequencing has changed. And they all kind of have a hive mind and they have particular labor that they do. And they all work, they make it look like ants walking, they're in parallel or
Oh.
following each other. But they also know, they have common knowledge. Like everybody can fly
Hmm.
a plane, everybody can drive a car, everybody could cut hair, everybody could do everything, because it's
Okay.
a
I th-
which is
I
weird,
think
right? It's not what bugs are like. That's where it gets crazy, crazy. But it's interesting because they're trying to play with that idea of what happens if and they're all peaceful and they're all trying to work for the good, supposedly. And it doesn't look good, to humans that aren't affected. There are a few humans that are immune to the virus, and they are lost among
gotcha.
these
Yeah,
people.
I'll
Yeah.
have to check it out. I don't want to get too far into it because people are already
Yes.
saying spoilers in the chat here, but I'll have to look into
Oh,
that, and maybe I'll
well, that's the
we'll
beginning.
be able
That's
to
the
talk we'll
first
be able to talk about
episode.
it later.
I only did the first episode. You learn all of this in episode one. So, and you would
Gotcha.
learn it from the preview if you watched a trailer. And I haven't said anything else that happens. But
Okay.
yeah, don't worry. There's a lot, and it's not over. So, um, okay. Anyway, you should look at it. Sorry if I
Yeah,
bothered
no,
anybody.
definitely.
No, but
I'll
that's the first like 30 minutes of the first show.
yeah, great. Yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll definitely have to take a look at it. Maybe I'll be able to discuss that on a future chats. Um, Logan, could you possibly switch us to the roaches, if you don't mind? The reason we're going to switch over there now is that termites are evolutionarily really highly derived social cockroaches. And this was a big revelation back in like 2013 where we finally looked at the DNA evidence enough to basically go, yeah, okay, all of the termites come out within the cockroach evolutionary lineage. And termites are one of these other types of organisms that have this eusocial social structure. So just like the ants, they have overlapping generations, cooperative brood care, and jobs within a colony, essentially. But the really cool thing about cockroaches and how they're related to termites is that we have examples of sort of the transition phase between a regular cockroach and your highly social termites. So, our Barbaras and baked beans here, the Madagascar hissing cockroaches, they're detritivores. So, they're also going to be similar in the isopods where they're coming together over shared resources. And in the case of them here at Alveus, they are related to one another. You know, it's offspring that continually get raised with parents. But in the wild, there isn't really anything tying the adult roaches or the roaches in general to one another after the mother live births them. They do have an egg sac, but then it hatches internally, so it looks like they're giving live birth. After she drops them off at that point, she kind of says, "See you later, bye bye. Maybe I'll see you around the rotten leaf pile." Um, and then on the other extreme, you have termites, which, like I said, have all of those same social structures and hierarchies that you get with ants. But the really, really cool thing, at least to me, is that there is a group of cockroaches that are called wood roaches. It's the genus Cryptocercus, and they sort of look like a Madagascar hissing cockroach, but they start to exhibit some of the sociality that you see with termites. Uh, they're called wood roaches because they live in wood. They feed on cellulose, which is something that we thought was only possible uh, in termites. But they also live subsocially, or sorry, quasi socially, because they're living with other individuals that uh, are not only there feeding on the same resources, but these roaches have cooperative brood care, meaning that adults will protect offspring that are not their own. There are multiple family groups living together in the same log, and it's really, really neat to see this because you don't often get to see examples of what is essentially the evolutionary transition between one way of life and another. We have this middle option, and it's really cool because people don't think of cockroaches as being social until the advent of us recognizing that termites are actually just a type of cockroach. But we have this third thing that's in the middle that shares some of the social characteristics of termites and some of the social characteristics of normal cockroaches. They have this Venn diagram. They're the area in the middle, a little bit there with the overlap. Julie, did you want to talk about your burying beetle study?
Oh my. I could say something. I mean, do you want? I don't know that much about burying beetles, or beetles generally, but I did read an article. That's another reason why it spurred my interest because it's what is it? The Nicrophorus? Is that how you
Mm-hmm.
say it?
Yep.
Beetles. They are what they're going to lay eggs, and the eggs hatch to larvae, and then the larvae also need to be fed or learn to eat before they become beetles, and they have to eat carcasses, right? So the adults are burying a dead body and laying the eggs on top of it, I'm presuming, so that when the larvae are there, they can learn to eat. And in those circumstances, there's a lot of threats from the outside. You don't want to lose the carcass. The babies aren't going to know how to eat. There's a lot of prep that needs to be done on a dead body. Like, excuse me for if that sounds crass, but the carcass, I guess. Like the hairs probably have to be pulled out, and things have to happen on the surface for it to be pliable enough for larvae to eat. And the parents both have to do this. So they exhibit biparental care. Usually both parents are helping with the eggs and the larvae and stuff. And I think that's to me, I was surprised to see that kind of biparental care in insects. So I was mentioning that to Evan. Did you want to say more about that, Evan? Or I don't know if I described that right.
Yeah, you hit all the main points. It's really neat. Again, like you said, it's very interesting and not very common in beetles in general to have biparental care. And these burying beetles, they're not going after these really big dead things. Mostly, they're feeding on mice and birds and chunks of larger things. But they're called burying beetles because they will drag that piece of food away, or if it's small enough, bury it as a whole. So they will dig out under and cover the carcass with dirt, and again, kind of dig it down. So they're protecting their energy investment of having just dug this big hole for this little carcass to fall down into, but they're also protecting this resource that is going to help their larvae grow and develop. The burying beetles are often monogamous, which is another really strange thing in insects. A lot of the times, mating in bugs is very willy-nilly. But these burying beetle pairs will stay together and will both parents, the mother and the father, will take part in cleaning the carcass for prep for the larvae. They will both feed the larva once it hatches, and they will both also defend their carcass from other burying beetles or other predators that are potentially coming to dig it up. Because not only are they, again, protecting their investment of energy of getting this food resource, but they're also protecting their larvae by fending off things that might be trying to harm the larvae themselves or the resource that they need to feed the larvae. And you can also see some of the similar biparental care investment in things like dung beetles, where again they're putting all of this investment into something to be able to benefit their own larvae, that they're going to protect that resource as best that they can. a lot of the examples of biparental care in beetles come from instances where there is a lot of prep work that goes into it, of finding a resource that they're going to be able to need to raise their larvae. And again, that investment that they put in early on makes them more likely to defend it later. The dung beetles will fight other males coming into their tunnels, trying to grab their dung ball and things like that, as opposed to some of these other beetles which will just lay eggs on a flower, and that's the last that that baby will ever see of its parents. In these biparental things, like bearing beetles and like dung beetles, and like these carrion beetles, there's investment at every step of the way, and because of that, they are more likely to defend that resource from whatever outside forces are coming in to potentially disrupt their plan that they've got going on.
So we're watching these guys share food right now, and they seem like they're doing okay with that. Is that, one of the sort of social behaviors that they learn is to know how to share, or is it just all for, I assume it's not fighting all the time. Someone was thinking they might have been fighting. It was kind of hard to tell because I don't think we know the behavior very well, but they seem to be fairly peaceful to me in terms of sharing this food.
Yeah, and they do. As you saw, that one was trying to kind of grab a piece from the other one, so it's not a total sharing is understood relationship here.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the Alveus world of these roaches, they don't have to fight and struggle for access to food. In nature, it's a little bit different because there's not always going to be a freshly cut piece of zucchini for everyone to go around. So they do get into tussles occasionally where they will try and take food particles and food pieces off on their own, kind of squirrel it away a little bit so they're able to feed on it. But here, they're not really in competition for any amount of resources. So they're likely at least a lot more cooperative here in terms of food, but the male hissing cockroaches have those big horns or those big bumps on the top of their head, and they do have male-male competition, where they will compete with one another for access to females. So even though they're living in a group, there is some social dynamic where males are still competing with one another, that you wouldn't necessarily see with females. Because again, once they breed, the females are kind of taking care of the eggs mostly on their own.
There was a question earlier about incest and whether the insects do that. And I know that, like with marmosets, and tamarins, they happen to be monogamous. But in tamarins, at least, I should check with marmosets to make sure. But in tamarins, if the mom is present, this is really wild. All the females' hormones are suppressed, so they never ovulate as long as they live in the family. So it's impossible for them to get pregnant. So it's not to say I don't know that, and I know I raised pigeons for a while in my lab, and they did commit incest if they weren't separated out. So the father would have relations with any female around, So I think that it's not something that all species are, have some kind of biological preparedness against. But I know that the tamarins did. So it was kind of interesting because I didn't have to worry about it when I had a big family, that there was going to be something going on with the genetics that way.
Yeah, so with insects, there's a lot of mechanisms that kind of allow for that to not be as big of a problem. Um, in the wild, where they have full roam of choosing whoever they want to mate with, a lot of the time males will emerge first to then go off and mate with females that are already in the ecosystem. And then days or weeks or sometimes even months later, the female siblings of those males will then hatch. So there's a delayed development time in the females that will basically ensure that the male offspring are mating with other females that they are not related to. And you see this even in Eva and Kiwi, the tarantulas. Um, Female tarantulas will oftentimes take close to 10 years to fully mature, while males will mature and usually pass within like 5 to 7. So in their case, siblings from the same egg sac can have like 3 to 5 years of time where they would be incompatible to mate with each other. And so that's how they will deal with that system in the wild, where they don't have any restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
In a tank situation, where we're keeping colonies of these things, it's a little bit different. They don't have the same number of options. Maybe when they're first born, they're not immediately mating with their direct relatives. But as these colonies persist for longer and longer, the inbreeding does kind of ramp up. So it is a good idea every now and again to introduce new genetics to kind of thin the effect of that. But a lot of the time, insect genomes are pretty big, and the likelihood for a deleterious mutation to show up in something that matters is not all that high. There are negative consequences, but they're happening in regions of the DNA that aren't affecting development or survival because they just have a lot of duplicated DNA a lot of the time. And that's a very broad stroke that I'm painting with because insect genetics is like super complicated. But that is one of the reasons, is because the mutations showing up somewhere where it actually matters is fairly uncommon.
Okay. Interesting. If you guys want to, we can go see some birds for a while before we're going to end in a bit. We might go over by a couple of minutes. Does that sound good? In the corner, just taking a nap on the zucchini. Who's sleeping? Who's sleeping? Oh, the one over there. The one that's not moving. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of food. That's a banquet, right, for them? That's really nice. Yeah, so could we go to, if Logan's there, can we go to Siren and Mia? The parrots? And while we're waiting, I can just, I mentioned before, I think 90% of all birds are cooperative breeders. And the ones that aren't, are things like, you probably know something about the cowbirds being parasitic brood species. They just lay their eggs anywhere and somebody else has to raise their babies, right? There's the European cuckoo bird is like that as well. And emus are kind of like that. They're not biparental anyway. So the female of emus will lay the eggs, obviously, and then she's done. She's like, I'm out of here. It's good. I did my job. I'm gonna go now. And that's probably to produce more eggs later. She's free to do whatever she wants. And then the dad has to sit on the eggs. And then the father usually also cares for the babies once they hatch. And there's a lot of feeding that has to happen. There's a lot of training. So emus are hunters. they'll go around and eat things that they kill out in the wild and on the ground and whatever, and also eating vegetation and stuff. And so those are sort of the exceptions to the rule, but most birds get together with a paired mate, and they have eggs. Obviously, the female lays the eggs, but they take turns sitting on the eggs to incubate, and then once the eggs hatch, they have to feed them with crop milk or something like that, partially digested foods for a while, and then they need training with flying, and they need training with eating other kinds of foods. And so it takes a lot of work, and that's what's worked out for most birds. And we're peeking at Mia right now. So did y'all see Mia having eggs recently, laying eggs? People remember this? What did you see in her behavior when she was in the nut house? She started laying eggs. Somebody says, I watched a pair of white-winged doves incubate their eggs. They take turns. Yes, so the male, yep, they do. All my pigeons would do that when we were breeding them, small batch. I mean, didn't do a lot of breeding, but we used them, and we just did, behavioral and cognitive research, and they lived a long time. But we let some of them breed because we didn't want to bring in avian influenza when that got bad, so we just kept a closed colony. Mia did lay, I don't know, I think it was something like 5 or 6 eggs she ended up laying. It was a crazy number. And she was very protective of her eggs, and she was sitting on the eggs, and she didn't want anyone touching the eggs. Yes. And I know they took them, obviously, they're not fertile. So birds, I think someone was asking that question too. So birds can figure out that it's not fertile, and they will break it on their own usually, although she kind of wanted to keep hers around for a while. But there's a heat difference when you're sitting on an egg that's got a baby in it that's growing versus, there's a weight difference too, but they're not picking it up. But there's a heat difference, so they don't get as warm. They're cooler, and they never heat up the way that it does when there's a small fetus in there. So they figure it out over a couple of days usually, and then they'll just break the egg themselves, or just ignore it, leave it in the nest. Yeah, so, well, if you didn't see it, it was kind of remarkable because she was very defensive about her eggs. I was very proud of her. She would make a wonderful mom. And then Siren's not laid any eggs, and Noli hasn't laid any eggs. They're not going to do breeding either. So, but if that happened, Stompy would have to be the one. The thing to think about it then is that these birds all evolved to do this because they needed biparental care for their offspring to survive, and they don't necessarily know that, but ones that were more cooperative with each other were the ones that did survive, so they could pass on that kind of social skill, that kind of compliance with each other and cooperation with each other, so that they're not ditching. And then that's how we end up with the birds that are alive today, are through these sort of natural selection and these threats, right? Siren is at Alveus because she literally won't eggs. Okay. I know there's some chickens that lay eggs and some that don't either, right? That not, and there's the kind of mayhem out there a little bit with Oliver. So, yeah. So, I don't know if you have more questions about which kinds of animals do this kind of biparental care. It's I mean, just think about it. It's birds, some beetles, right, are doing biparental care. So in the insect world, beetles, some certain beetles, not all the beetles, most of the birds, almost no primates other than us and marmosets and tamarins. And in mammals, it's interesting. So wolves, oh my goodness, Sarah looks passed out on the cardboard there. So I just looked up and saw her head. I'm like, what happened? So wolves do cooperative parental care. But dogs and cats that have been domesticated don't. And many of you probably know this, having dogs and cats, or knowing about puppies and kitties, that the female takes care of them. So, one way of raising is uniparental care, which is often the female although in emus it's the male. And then in wolves, because there's so much that has to go on, they have to learn how to hunt, and they have to stay in the pack and all these kinds of things, and they have to get fed and be brought food. They act as cooperative parents. Oh, now you're going to start asking me about other mammals, right? So dolphins do have, it's like alloparental care. It's not necessarily the case that the male helps take care of the offspring, but they're the small group. It's sort of like the way elephants are as well. Elephants are like this. They usually refer to them as allomaternal care. So there's all sorts of aunties and siblings that are female that are hanging around that care for them. And dolphins and whales both are like that as well. But, you know, a lot of mammals aren't. There's a mouse, a California mouse, that is a biparental care creature, and voles. I don't know if you know about voles, but they're very social. They're little rodents that bury themselves. There's a lot of them in Minnesota. They also do biparental care, and gerbils do. There's a poison frog that does, because the tadpoles are at risk. It's usually, it requires resources being at risk at some point, and better success with multiple adults caring for the offspring, and then that genetically and gets transferred over time, because the ones that do that survive and the ones that don't do that don't survive. So so it's really interesting to think about these different pockets. So there's an amphibian pocket, there's an insect pocket, there's a lot of birds, there's a few primates, there's some mammals, but not all mammals, not all canines, right? But some canines. So it's really interesting how this fairly complicated social awareness came to be across different evolutionary pathways. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. You know, it is these pressures and this investment that makes them kind of shift towards this social behavior, because typically it's very, very heavily biased towards female investment. You know, egg cells are some of the largest in the animal kingdom, so regardless of that, she is putting in the energy and effort to produce the egg, then raise the egg, take care of the larva or baby or whatever it is, and usually the male is just off trying to make more babies with someone else. So the system, when they pair up, is very, very uncommon, but like you were saying, it does show up in all of these different groups, at least somewhere, which I think is really, really neat.
And so I think we're going to have to, people are saying men, yeah. I could tell you stories with some animals, but we won't do that now. I just wanted to say, you know, it's really cool to think about these social things. And speaking of social things, it's really cool that you're here, that we people obviously cooperate and work together. But the fact that you are here and learning about this stuff and helping support animals in the world, which I know you guys do through your show and tells and all of the stuff that you're working on, you know, it's great that you're doing it. And, you know, we're sharing these behaviors with others, but we have, you know, we can also care for all of the animals in the world. We have to. And so I found a poem that was written a long time ago, and I thought of it because of the Africa trip, because Isaac Dinesen loved this poem too, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it was written in 1798 by Sam Taylor Coleridge about animals, and he had to write a poem for a wedding. You can imagine poets back then had to do things for people. So he says, "Farewell, farewell, but this I tell to thee, thou wedding guest. He prayeth well who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best who loveth best all creatures, both great and small." And then there's the last line is about God loving them. So I won't read that in case, you know, it's more of a Christian thing. But what it's saying is that how important, it reminds us how important the interconnectedness is between all of us, all living things, and that it's really important to care for them. And I think that's the whole point of Alveus, and I'm glad that you're here and working with us on that. So thank you so much. Oh, I have one more gift. So the other one was a bug mug, because I'm trying to match what we're doing here. Oh my gosh, where is it? Oh. Okay, I lost it. Shoot. I'll do it later, a little bit later. Just stay around. But I was going to do a bird mug, sirens mug, but it fell off. Anyway. Yeah, so thank you so much, you guys. And thank you, Evan, for being open to all of this.
No, thank you. Thank you for the invite. I mean, that poem summed it up really well and really talks about not only, the importance of understanding animals, but understanding that we are also animals and how we fit in to all of these different roles. I think it's cool to see how that investment is seen across the animal kingdom, and how we're able to use that and what we understand about them to better care for and advocate for conserving animals in the wild. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you for the invite. This has been fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be around, so we'll see you in the chat, and I'll do the mug right when I get off right now. All right.
Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye.